I am doing this topic today I'm calling it repairing the net. This is an idea that I have had in my mind for at least a year in regards to PDA and burnout. And I have been really nervous to talk about it, to be honest, because it's like this kind of nebulous concept that I haven't been able to pull together tightly. And I am right now experimenting with just diving into things in order to make progress. So consider this a rough draft version of this topic. It will not be entirely polished, but this is, like I said, this is something I'm learning about myself, that sometimes I just have to move. And if I just move, then the pieces start to come together. And I figure things out as I go along, versus this idea in my mind that I have to have it all pretty and ready to go and a bow put on it before I can even do anything about it. Freezes me up completely. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. One thing this week that I guess I should say kind of came to me was that I wanted to turn this into an acronym. So repairing the net, I was trying to think of a way to turn net into an idea that would capture what it is I'm trying to communicate here. And this is the progress, the journey through burnout. I have utilized this method in my own mind and in my own way. And why I picked the illustration of a net is that everything connects. So for me to really be effective with one thing, like let's say nutrition, let's talk about nutrition, or not really talk about it, but if I'm going to reference nutrition connects with demands, connects with relationships, connects with other things. So not any one of these elements is in isolation from another. They all weave together. Why I also like the idea of a net, and also maybe picturing a web, as if you watch a spider build a web, they go around and around and around. And, when they're at one part of the spider web, the web, and they're working on it and it's incomplete and there's this big hole in the center, and they're on let's say the north end of the spider web, it can look really far away. The south end can look extremely far away. And it can feel like, when are these 2 points ever going to touch? They're so far away from each other that it feels impossible. But what happens is, as the web building continues and as the spider goes point to point to point, connection to connection to connection, working with whatever the next thing is that they have at hand, in time, those distances close and the gaps close until you have something that's whole and sustained. And that's how I've approached burnout healing, in what I consider to be one of the least stressful ways and the most efficient way possible. Because whether you're the parent or you're the child going through it, or you're both going through it, burnout is a very discouraging experience. It impacts so many aspects of who we are. It impacts so much of our hope. And so recognizing that it's very normal and expected that through the process, you are going to feel very far away from a lot of your goals, or a lot of things that you hope are eventually possible. And here I'm speaking in abstract. So, I'll get to this, but there are some goals and dreams we do have to drop along the way because they're too heavy to sustain the net. So this net that I'm talking about is one that's rebuilt with PDA in mind, because, we're born into this world and we're given a net, hypothetically. We have our family we're born into, we have our immediate town, our communities, and then the bigger, broader culture. And at its best, that is supposed to provide a support system so that we can go through things and not be so devastated, because we have an infrastructure that sustains us at our weakest points. But with PDA, with autism, with a lot of mental health challenges, not only are we devoid of a proper network or net that actually can sustain our needs, but often they're contradictory. So it's not like a weaker, somewhat adequate net. It's often a net that's on fire. So I want to keep that imagery in mind, that we don't want to just build the same structure that disappointed us already. We don't want to find ourselves back in the same situation we started at. Ideally, when you go through burnout, there's a learning process that you're also going through, or there is a learning process that you do have to go through as part of sustainable recovery, not just short-term recovery. Okay? So that is where that comes from. What did I call it again? Hold on one second. I don't remember my own notes, and I make up new words all the time, I swear. Anyway, so necessary elements. So each of these things I'm going to talk about, I consider necessary elements of who we are. And then time, which is just what it is. Some things we can't rush or make happen any quicker. We just have to trust the process that is time. Okay, so what are these? I'm calling them tenets for now. I might change that later. But for right now, I'm calling them tenets. These are what I consider to be points of contact with healing and restoration. And like I said, they're not in isolation from each other. So first I'll list them off. Relationship, demand loads, life balance, diet and nutrition, and stimulation and growth. So I'll go over these one by one, and then I'll kind of explain what I mean by them. Number one, demand load. So with PDA, that's absolutely always a component. And it's not just demands like, well, let's see, how do I put this? So it's not just demands that you would expect to be demands, because I have seen PDA people be on fire and able to accomplish hours and hours and hours of work, or do hours and hours and hours of tasks. So it's not just this thing is a job I have to do. There's something more to it with PDA that changes based on our perception of it. So our perception, our skill set, it's a very unique experience. So demand load is not an objective thing that I could sit here and describe to you what I mean or what's going to apply to everyone's situation. It's more of this unique, experience with your child and with yourself. Even I would include yourself in this, that has to do with, this feels like too much to me right now. This feels like too much pressure. Maybe it doesn't even make sense. I think we're all struggling a lot with perception of what things ought to be, how they ought to feel, how other people are experiencing things. And I have found that it is way more efficient for me to abandon what ought to be and just look at what is. So if there are certain things that for me feel especially heavy or especially pressure filled, then I need to give that extra space until my net starts to close in, and maybe I can find a way to scaffold to that demand if it's a necessary one. Now, if we're talking about things that we decide aren't important at all, that can loosen up a lot of weight or lighten up a lot of weight. Like, I'm never going to make all of us sit at the kitchen dinner table to eat a meal. I'm just not. For us, there's not enough value that comes out of it. There's too much stress that would, in our unique situation, cause more problems for me to prioritize than it would get benefit out of it. So I am not even interested in somehow meeting that demand. Let me think of something else. Housework for me is one right now that I am really struggling with. So I'm in the process of burnout healing for myself. And as I talk about this, I'm thinking of how I have approached my kids and how I've approached myself. And housework is one that I am currently troubleshooting because it has been out of reach for a long time. But I feel it's like you go through a grieving process when you're first reaching, let's call it hypothetical rock bottom. You have to go through a grieving process when you hit that point of burnout and acceptance, and you let a lot of things go. If you get to that point and you don't have a choice, you let a lot of things go. But with healing, for myself, for my kids, and what I've heard from others, you begin to feel a kind of anticipatory sort of agitation when maybe that thing is within reach again. So that's where I'm at with housework. And I do plan to talk about this topic more than once. I want to kind of turn it into a system that I can use to help with burnout healing, kind of turn it into maybe a workshop or something. So I'm going to be exploring these topics more closely, and I'll share kind of my progress with the things I'm struggling with as I also talk about this. Um, so demand load is one of them. The next is relationship. And I am making the word or the idea of relationship very broad. I am not just talking about relationship with each other. I'm talking about relationship to literally everything in our life. I see it through the lens of relationship. For me to have healed or to have progressed in things, it has helped me so much to see it through what is my relationship to this thing. Can it be repaired? Does it need a break? Or am I, do I have toxic thoughts or expectations that are embedded in this in this thing that I want to get done or that I can't achieve, but I've determined that it is a part of me. It is an essential thing, but it's out of reach. So approaching it from relationship really has helped me a lot to kind of find my way back again to certain things. Relationship to each other is a big deal. I feel like when we are talking about PDA right now in public spaces, there's initial, dropping demands. It's a lot of subtraction. So a lot of the conversation around PDA is about subtracting, taking fewer things, taking things off of children's plates so that they are, closer to where they can engage with things. But I find that not only is there subtraction that helps with our functioning and our ability and our capacity, but also adding to our situation is safe relationships. So as I have grown and developed and learned better boundaries with people and healthier relationships and better communication, and as I have developed connections with people who understand, my PDA needs and don't judge me for it. I mean, you could find someone that doesn't even know or understand about PDA, but they could treat you in a way that's PDA affirming. So these are the things that really give me fuel, and I've seen give my kids fuel to taking risks or propelling them forward in a new direction. And it can help them go, just like that, one step further because they feel more secure in their relationships that they have in their life. And the inverse is true. The more toxic relationships I've had, and by toxic, I mean they are people who are not working with you. Like they're not working with you in who you are. They are working with a version that they think of you as, and they're not accepting who you truly are. And that'll be a conversation of its own for another podcast. But I've had to kind of face that as well, that, maybe it's a temporary situation or maybe it's more long term. But if there is someone who's dissatisfied with my kids or dissatisfied with myself, if they have a bar of expectation set up, they are completely entitled to having certain expectations of the people in their lives. But we may not be able to meet that need, and it's just better for both people if you release that. And it's less of a weight, again, on the net, because, we can't change who we are. We can just work with who we are. and discover, what is our best, what works for us. So, relationships, that is how I see it. And then also with relationship has been my relationship to myself. What are the narratives that I have inside of my head? What am I telling myself when I'm going through a hard time? There's the route where you're beating yourself up all the time, never good enough, kind of flogging yourself mentally to keep going or keep producing, and that doesn't help. Like, I've never seen that help me ever. I've never had it help me to punish myself into some kind of compliance. This is different than troubleshooting and encouragement. So I might have a problem that only I can fix, and I'm the one contributing to its existence, but that's up to me to troubleshoot safely through. And it doesn't work if I am, again, kind of like wielding the sword of judgment and punishment, whether that's at myself or at other people. And I don't know if this sounds too abstract or if I'm making any sense whatsoever. So I welcome comments, by the way. Sometimes I do get very abstract and kind of almost poetic, and I think I lose people, but hopefully not. So that's one of the angles I'll touch on. So relationship. The other is life balance. I have seen a pattern of a certain ratio for myself and my kids that feels like it works. This is not something I've talked about at all in the PDA community, so I haven't got feedback on it. But I am interested actually on getting feedback on this, which is I find that I do my best when I have a ratio of 80% flexibility with 20%. Actually, it's not just flexibility in demands or whatever, but a lot of things. But just to start with. So if I have 80% of my life that is structured in a flexible way, meaning I can decide when I can do it, how often I do it, no one really cares if I do it or not, or, like there's just these elements to it that make it less intense or pressure filled. Then I can handle about 20% of more specific expectations. And we're talking like events that are scheduled, very specific tasks done in specific ways, more structured, I guess I should say. So the 20% would be the more structured elements of my life. They do hold value. Structure does have value. But it has to take up a smaller corner. And what this does is it kind of keeps me motivated, because it keeps me in a range where I can actually do it. If it's just at 20% of structure, I'm not feeling as claustrophobic, as anxious, which then frees me up to be more productive in my 80%. So the idea here isn't to do only 20% forever. It's that when you're doing the 20, then you have room for the 80, and the 80, there's more room to breathe and express yourself and choose things and be spontaneous. And all of these things is kind of like finding a flow in the spontaneity is very life-giving for a PDA person. We easily become just that claustrophobic feeling if too much of our life is structured, even if it is structure of our own making. And yeah, as I'm talking about this, I'm like, each of these will probably make a really good podcast to kind of explain more of what I do to help accommodate myself to work with these ideas. But yeah, 80-20 is, I think, what we're going towards. If you are fresh in burnout, that's not a thing. So it's going to be skewed to like 100% nothing. So, don't feel like this is like, okay, immediately slap on. I do feel like an 80-20 ratio is a great place to find oneself as a long-term goal with, of course, whatever. I mean, I'm not talking about some kind of science project here. I'm literally just giving these concepts to kind of illustrate how important it is to have flexibility. Next one is diet and nutrition. I know this is a sensitive topic for a number of reasons, so I'm going to get those right out of the way first thing. When I talk about diet or nutrition, I'm never going to be talking about a cure for PDA or autism or ADHD. I'm just not. I mean, first of all, I'm not a doctor, so I will put that out there as well. I am not a doctor. I am not a nutritionist. I am not especially trained in this specific topic. So please keep that in mind as I discuss it. I'm going to be just giving you my experiences with diet nutrition, and I also might make some referrals in ways to find out more as far as supporting yourself. So, diet nutrition. From the stories that I heard from parents online and advice that I got, I figured out pretty quickly that there was some foods that my kids were especially sensitive to, that I was especially sensitive to. There were deficiencies that I had that when I attempted to fill that gap, it did affect how I felt, which then affect my productivity, etc. I approach diet and nutrition though from a low demand, low pressure point of view. And this is where, again, these topics intersect. So earlier when I was talking about demands, I would not want to focus on this with an intensity that would make it triggering for me or for my children. When we look at relationship and we talk about relationship, I would want to approach nutrition through the lens of protecting the relationship to food and being careful about making any dramatic changes and strategizing from a sensitive point of view that doesn't shame food or shame diet. These are all important. But I am at a point now. I was gifted a bunch of Hardee's Nutritionals daily essential nutrients to try. And I've been on them for 2 months. And before that, I was taking some other things too. So, I've taken fish oil tablets and da 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 da. I'm trying to think what else I took. I took methylated bees. But now I am taking this Hardee's Nutritionals daily essential nutrients. I started out slow and then worked my way up to the full dosage. And this is, for me, I can tell the difference. So, again, it's not a substitution for these other components of functioning for being PDA. So I am still PDA. I'm still avoidant. I still struggle with doing tasks. But when I feel like I have better energy, when I feel less foggy and like I'm not reacting to the foods I'm eating, then it's just one less hurdle. And that's how it's been for my kids as well. So I have slowly kind of experimented with different things to try, and I'll continue to update everybody as I do that, because right now I am working on getting one of my kids to take it, and he is the most he's very restricted eating and also the most kind of insular, isolated of my kids. And I have to be extra gentle with him, and he really can't handle much pushing at all. So I'm very curious to see. Right now he agrees to take, I've just got him taking a fourth of the dose, and it's 3 times a day. So he takes a capsule. They also have a powder, by the way, but he takes one capsule 3 times a day. And now today he came and he asked about it. I haven't taken my pill yet. I said, okay, I'll get it. I just stay really casual and I stay informative, and I just explain to him, like, this is why this is important, da da da. It can affect your sleep, and it can affect your mood. It just can make it harder. And yeah, that's where I'm coming from with diet and nutrition. But an important component for sure, and especially if you have, as part of this, I guess I should put in there diet, nutrition, and just health or well-being, bodily well-being or something. Because if there's a co-occurring condition happening, whether that's POTS or pandas, like there's a whole list of them, that is going to affect how you feel, and that's going to affect your burnout progression. And sometimes if you have a medical condition that is very difficult to treat, I just find it's helpful to know that. that that's going to impact me and I shouldn't be hard on myself. I need to build my life around these limitations. And the last one is stimulation and growth. By this, I mean new experiences, new things. Doesn't have to be big. It's just we are part of being human is we are explorers, and there are a lot of different ways to explore. And if that means, right now during the worst of burnout, that all a child can explore is their tablet, then so be it. My view of tablets, by the way, is modern problems sometimes require modern solutions. I think the burnout that we're seeing happen so frequently in our culture right now, especially the last 30, 40 years, is because of some modern problems. This is not, our diets have changed. Our community connections have changed. Like we are more distanced from each other. Some things never change, but I feel like we can all see the fact that there have been a lot of changes in modern society that I think uniquely impact being PDA. And that's part of the reason why I look at tablets or devices and I go, you know what? Let's help ourselves here for, we don't want to always be on devices, but devices are just a tool and they can be a very essential tool or coping mechanism during some very, very difficult times. And this web building that we're doing, it's about adding, well, I was going to get to that in a second. I kind of jumped ahead. So I'll just say that new experiences might be limited initially to watching new shows, watching YouTube videos, playing games, and trying to remember that there are times where we can connect with each other in our relationships over whatever it is that our kids or we are currently interested in. I will crash out so fast when I am, again, picturing an ideal that we are not living. Would I love it if we were going out more often to go places? Yes, and we are more now. But we're at year 4, and there's 4 of us. So if I, looked, I was tempted many, many times, and I had many voices that were telling me that I was dooming us to a restricted life because I was choosing to live a limited way for a period of time or as long as it felt like it was needed. But here we are now, and we are going to things. We're starting to go places. And in fact, I think that this topic that I'm trying to talk about, this is a great time for me to talk about it because I feel like I'm at a turning point. I've had many turning points along the way, but this feels like one that is the one that people want to see, which is, okay, can we not be inside all the time? Can we not be on our devices all the time? Can our house sometimes or mostly, can it be peaceful? Can it be this, that, or whatever? And my answer is yes, it can potentially get there. And we all are in different situations, but I want to provide some kind of framework that is adaptable. And so kind of taking these broader concepts and then working with what you have, you're not going to have the same resources I have or the same opportunities, and that's okay. I mean, it is what it is, but I still think we can grow to find whatever our best version is of ourselves or our families or our situations. Last couple things I wanted to say is just mentioning strength-based first. Work with what you got. Don't beat the dead horse of what you don't got. So appreciate the things your kids are doing that you can maybe do with them, that you can do for yourself. Just don't, again, project into a future that isn't what's happening now. Enjoy the family that you do have. Appreciate the things you do have, because our attitude affects so much And we're going to struggle. We're going to have hard times, and we can be real about that too. But there's a difference between like processing our frustration and talking it through with someone we trust and or wallowing. So wallowing is where you get stuck in a mindset. And it's not, again, I'm not trying to level out like judgments or moral failings. It's just functionally not working. I get very pragmatic. Instead of moralizing or like, I don't like to rely on guilt to motivate because I don't think it's not a sustainable motivator. Again, I'm pragmatic. So this is a pragmatic piece of advice that if you get stuck in a mindset that's only focusing on what you don't have, it is very hard to see what you do have, and it's very hard to reach for the next handhold. In your web building, in your net building, you're not going to reach for the next opportunity that you do have in front of you because you're focused on the thing you don't have. And that's going to slow you down. Let's see. Looking into the future, big picture, I've kind of already addressed these things. One, I'm not sure where to put this, but with burnout healing and figuring out how to build something that works for you and works for your kids, I like to mention that I'm very cautious about when families focus on only compensating. It becomes so there are imbalanced ways. This is what I'm trying to say. There are imbalanced ways to rebuild your web, and if you've got something jutting in the middle, you're not going to be able to connect all the strings. You've got something stuck in the middle. And sometimes what's stuck in the middle is literally like public school or a really unhealthy relationship with a partner. Like there are things that are very hard to work around and complicated. But I like to throw the caution out there. Let's look at the public school one. So I've seen families that don't make adaptations at school, don't ask for an IEP or don't have proper supports, or maybe they do have an IEP, but they're still seeing a lot of breakdowns at home or a crumbling in a personal life. That's a lopsided kind of solution, which if you project into the future and if you think about what that's going to look like as they develop and get older, that's creating a very imbalanced life work kind of balance where they assume that they have to push through all the time to work, and then their life it's okay or normal or expected if their personal life is falling apart. There are situations where we sometimes have to do this. I know that. I know that that is true. I still throw it out there as a caution, and I do it for two reasons. One, because sometimes there is a choice, and parents just haven't absorbed that yet. They haven't like wrapped themselves around like, what if I did things different? It's scary. They don't want to, but I'm going to say don't do the lopsided thing if you can avoid it, because there is something, especially like the message that we're sending our kids if we do have a choice and we're choosing to create an unsustainable, lopsided lifestyle is that these are our values, and that's the values they're passing on. So if we're in a situation, this is where I'm going to end for now, but if we're in a situation where we can't make a lot of adaptations because of safety or, maybe there's a custody battle and we are being scrutinized and we can't safely make some of these changes without someone judging us or potentially losing our children. Like, I know these are real scenarios that people deal with. It still matters that you know these. It still matters that you know this. It still matters that in your mind, you can, I believe, find ways to talk to yourself and talk to your children that are like, if we could do better, we would. It's a form of self-care for myself. It has been a form of self-care to say, like, if I could do better, I would. This is not because of me, choosing to be in a toxic situation. I do want better and I will be on the lookout for better. But right now, this is where we're at and we will get through this somehow. and giving voice to that and somehow giving that sort of validation, I feel helps to get through things. So we're not gaslighting ourselves or pretending it's okay when it's really not. But we might have to survive it. Sometimes life is about survival. So, okay, that's all I'm going to talk about for today. I just thank everybody who's listening, and I look forward to speaking more on this soon. Be sure to drop any comments. If you can rate my podcast, I would deeply appreciate it. Any reviews. I also right now have our 2 things I wanted to announce before I go. One is that we have 2 free resources now on our PDA Insiders website, one of which is we had the Declarative Language Handbook free training on that. And now we have an Introduction to PDA free training. So you can find that, links for that on our website, pda-insiders.com. And then the link there is to free resources. So I definitely encourage you to check that out. Second thing is our masterclass enrollment is now open. The starting date for that is January. Let me look here. I think it's January 14th. So masterclass enrollment is January 14th. We have a payment plan at $35 a month, or a one-time payment of $300. This is 10 weeks with 10 animated lessons, helping understand PDA from birth to adulthood, the full scope of it. And when it comes to supporting PDA and troubleshooting problems and getting through burnout, I can absolutely promise you that understanding PDA and what works for us is a very essential part of finding your way out and finding your way through to something better. I'm trying to take up more time, but as an adult who went through burnout at least twice, I will say this, 2 major burnouts and many small ones along the way. I went through my first burnout healing, had no idea about PDA, but I did know that whatever I was doing to try to make myself more productive got me to that point. I was trying to push myself to do more. And I was listening to the voices I had in my head, which was, you're not disciplined enough. You need to try harder. You need to push harder. And I devastated my nervous system, and it took me 5 years to get out of that. And I didn't know what was going on or why it was happening, but I knew enough to go, this is not working. Like, that did not work, whatever that was. And I did trauma work, and I worked on my relationships, and I did heal a lot of areas through counseling. But it was not until I heard about PDA, until I got connected with the PDA community, and I started learning more stories and putting together more of the pieces, that I have really been able to feel a turnaround in my life. This is not the same journey that I went through before. And being able to see my kids not experience the same struggles that I did, and actually see them be able to engage with other people and do activities and communicate their needs. None of this would be possible without understanding PDA and its unique sensitivities and its unique strengths. So I highly recommend our masterclass. If you need a scholarship or anything else, please reach out to me. My focus is on accessibility. Yes, we need to make a living, but also I want this available to as many people as possible because I really believe it is important. So with that, thank you again for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon.